You know he told Adam and Eve to replenish the earth? My word is bond. Watch this.
So the content creator here is making the argument that because the King James Version says replenish, that there must have been people here prior to the commandment given to Adam and Eve. Otherwise, why would you or how could you replenish something that was not there? This is what happens a lot of times when people are reading the King James Version of the text. Because it does not use modern language, it sometimes can create a barrier to truly understanding what the text means because we're looking at what it actually says in English as opposed to what it meant in its original language and to its original audience. Let's check it out. Notice what it says, Genesis 1:28. God blessed them and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. That is Strong's numbers H4390. Let's look at what that word actually means in the original language. So here are two Hebrew lexicons, the Strong's and the Brown Driver Briggs lexicons. And as you can see, it literally means to fill the earth. All right. So you can see that both in the Strong's and in the Brown Driver Briggs, as well as in the New American Standard Bible's lexicon as well. It literally means to fill. Now, watch, I'm going to show you if he had taken the time to study this and read a few verses earlier, this is what he would have seen. This is Genesis 1:22, 6 verses before. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. And look, it is the same number in the Hebrew lexicon, Hebrew 43 and 90. So, for whatever reason, the translators in the King James Bible in verse 28 decided to translate it to replenish. But in verse 22, it's the same exact word, but they made the decision to use the word fill. But as we can see from the clear evidence from three Greek lexicon or Hebrew lexicons, the actual translation of the word and the meaning in this particular passage is to fill the earth, not simply to replenish the earth. And as you can see here from the Cambridge Bible commentary, in the context of verse 22, it is talking about what God was commanding to the fish, and it was to fill the waters. But as you can see, it is the same exact Hebrew word. This is why modern translations understand what the text means, so they translated it more properly to the word fill as opposed to replenish. The Christian Standard Bible says to be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. The ESV, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. New American Standard Bible, fill the earth. You can see here in the NIV, to fill the earth. The New Living Translation, fill the earth and govern it. And the same thing happens in the Amplified Version, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. This is why I always recommend to people to utilize one of the more modern translations when actually trying to understand what the text actually means, because a lot of times the King James Version, the meaning of the text can be a little obscured. Chap, help me understand this a little bit more. I'm so glad you asked. All right, so this is one of my favorite charts that I share with my students, like and everything. And as you can see here, when it comes to translations, there are some translations that are very literal and some that are very formal. And as you can see, the King James Version is a very formal reading of the scriptures. It's a very formal translation, meaning it's very word for word. All right, so it's trying to give us the best, one of the best as far as word for word. But guess what? In doing so, it's not very readable. And so that is why we always recommend, most, Bible teachers are recommending to not utilize the King James Version to begin with and everything, because it can, a lot of times it's not very readable to modern day audiences. And so you can understand what the word says, but not what the word means. All right. And what the word means is a lot of times more important than what it actually says. Let me give you an example. So this is one of my favorite examples. Psalm 78:25. Man did eat angels' food. Angels' food? He sent them meat to the full. And I use 7 or 8 of the most popular versions of the scriptures. So, and all of them say either angels' food or the bread of angels, the food of angels. So is Psalm 78:25 actually saying that there is an angelic food? Absolutely not. Now, you can look up those words in any particular language you want to. You can go back to the original Hebrew and it will tell you what the word says in Hebrew, but it's not going to tell you what the word means. It's not going to tell you what that phrase means. Well, then how do we figure it out? If we can't look into the text, if we can't look at the actual words, if we can't go into the Hebrew to figure it out, well, how do we figure it out? Context. That's how you figure it out. So this is the KJV. And now in this story, the context is the writer is talking about the things that God had done for Israel in their history. He had led them out of Egypt. He had split the waters in the Red Sea and led them through on dry land. He gave them the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night, but yet they kept testing God. They kept tempting him and angering God. Reading this in the King James Version is really, really difficult to understand. But watch what happens when we look at this in the CSB. So check it out. They brought down streams out of stone and made water flow like rivers, but they continued to sin against God. They tested him. You can read it for yourself. He struck the waters for them and brought out water. All of this stuff. And then in verse 22, because they did not believe God, it was God's anger was flared up against them. So what does God do? He gave a command to the clouds above and opened the doors of heaven and rained manna for them to eat. He gave them grain from heaven. Here it is. People ate the bread of angels. He sent them an abundant supply of food. When looking at this in a different translation and observing the entire passage in context, we can see that the bread of angels is actually referring to manna, the manna that came down from heaven. That is how you do a really, really quick Bible study in helping to understand not what does the word say, but what does the passage mean and what would it have meant first to the original audience? And unfortunately, that's something this content creator did not do. The Bible is not written to us, but it is written for us. That simply means that we are not the original audience that the writers were writing to. All right. Genesis was written to a specific group of people, and it was not 21st century Christians living in the Western part of the world. So our first responsibility is to understand who was the writer writing to and how would they have understood the passage. Does anyone think that the original recipients of the passage in Genesis would have thought that God was saying, hey, replenish the earth with people, when God literally says in the same book that Adam was the first man and Eve was the mother of all living? That would contradict God's own words. So clearly the context is telling us that replenish does not indicate that there were other people here. That replenish actually is better translated as fill. So again, understanding scripture is a challenge. It is something that is going to require hard work. It is not something that we can approach with an apathetic attitude. And we should honor God's word by not assuming a conspiracy theory prior to going and investigating what the text, not just what it says, but what does the text actually means. I love y'all. I'm here to help. Send me any questions you may have. God bless.